deserves our debt of gratitude and our thanks tonight. So he has one more official meeting coming up on Monday, the 23rd, in which we do wrap up our amendment work from the Plan Commission and then pass the UDO on to this body. And so my thanks to you, Joe, and again, we appreciate your service to Bloomington. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sturbaum.
Yeah, I've served with Joe, and it's hard to imagine how many hours he put in. You know, just this recent UDO, there were 2 meetings, a 6-hour meeting, a 4-hour meeting, a 2-hour meeting. Susan can attest to that. And then multiply that by 18 years, 20 years, 20-some years. I mean, that is real heavy lifting. But you know, one of the issues that came out of those UDO hearings is something I want to talk about. There's a zoning change proposed for Bloomington that will affect everyone who owns a home. The proposal is to allow duplexes and triplexes as a conditional use in single-family neighborhoods everywhere. Suburbs, allowed. You'll have to sue to enforce your covenants. Core neighborhoods, allowed. You bought with the confidence that your local government wouldn't change the zoning after you made your lifetime commitment to that neighborhood. So sad, too bad. This will come to council, so people will have a chance to talk about that again. And this is actually good news for owners of and investors in rental property. They can convert their rentals into denser duplexes and triplexes. Their property values will actually increase the day this is voted into law. The large rental owners, like the one who was recently sued by Hand, will make out like bandits. But this is not good news if you're a homeowner in Bloomington. And here is a national update. This is very recent. House Representatives Trey Hollingsworth is co-sponsoring the YIMBY Act called HB 4351. The Senate version is co-sponsored by Todd Young with Brian Schatz and Denny Heck. So these are Democrats and Republicans both. The idea is that if they don't like how our zoning is written, they will withhold CDBG money from this community. That CDBG money is meant for funding low and moderate income persons of our community. If they don't think the community has liberalized its zoning enough, that federal money will stop coming to Bloomington if this passes. Hollingsworth said, "A safe, stable home serves as a bedrock for our families. Our federal laws should encourage building affordable housing for our neighbors, not driving up costs and creating barriers through burdensome and restrictive land use policies." But locally, in our college town, it's home ownership that provides safe and stable homes for families and a chance to build equity and family security. Turning local ownership into more rentals is the long-term reality of the proposed changes to single-family zoning. Investors and developers will love this bill. Republicans already love it. Local discretion must be exercised to not destroy our already dense core neighborhoods for this new urban renewal project. Unlike Seattle, we have room for added density without cannibalizing our existing working and middle-class neighborhoods. Let's find a Bloomington way to add density wisely. Changing density everywhere is a siren song, and we must use our best common sense to resist it. Or do we join with Todd Young and Trey Hollingsworth on a bill President Trump will likely sign? That gives me reason to pause and think. We can trust them to look out for our own best interests, can't we? I think we better look out for our own. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sturbaum. And just a slight correction, Joe Hoffman has served 32 years on the Plan Commission.
That's mind-boggling.
Yes, and September 9th, 2019 was Joe Hoffman Day in Bloomington because of his service. Councilmember Sims.
Thank you. I would also like to offer my congratulations and respect to Joe Hoffman as well. Many of us have served on the Plan Commission. I was there 15 years ago. And fortunately, we didn't have to so much deal with behemoth structures at the time. But my indoctrination was south of Tap Road, walking on empty property, looking at the slope and some endangered plant life that was down along a creek. That was part of learning about whether to approve a petition to build on that area or not. So I will also say that I only lasted about 9 months, because that's a lot of work, so a whole lot of work. So I do respect Mr. Hoffman and wish him well. One other comment too, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, there was an event down at the transit center having to do with the Rosa Parks celebration and the opening of that and all that. But in giving that speech, one of the things that I said was, and I fully believe this, is that the power in the people is greater than the people in power. And I just kind of want that to marinate just for a second. The power of the people is greater than the people in power. I'm saying that to say, we just heard my colleague, Councilman Sturbaum, talk about new legislation at the state. We are the people, and if we don't want those people representing us, then we have to vote, we have to register, and we have to get people in there that represent us. Same thing for us sitting up here. The exact same thing. This also goes with the UDO. So I just encourage everyone to participate, and hopefully the will of the people will prevail, and then we can move forward to deal with the growth, the future growth of this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Volin.
I think it was Archimedes who said, give me a lever and a place to stand and I can move the world. The question is, where are we standing? Whoever, certain locations provide better leverage than others. So it's nice to say that the people have power, but can they really wield it? Are they standing in the right location where they can make that change happen? I want to thank everyone here on this dais for the special session that we held on Monday. It was a very difficult problem that we tried to solve. I think we untangled the, if I'm going to use another Greek reference, the Gordian knot of that piece of legislation. But I mean, it was an unusual thing that required a lot of cooperation from everyone, and I think it's one of the decisions that has been most, I don't know how to put it, honestly decided by everyone in years. Everyone came to it in good faith with honestly held beliefs, and I am humbled and grateful that we were able to do that meeting. In other news, this Friday there will be a panel discussion on WFIU's noon edition about parking. It is the most popular topic that I deal with in District 6, being the center of the city where all the regulated parking tends to congregate. I encourage you all to listen to that, ask questions. I also want to encourage people, since parking is a perennial topic, that the next meeting of the Parking Commission is Thursday, the 26th. And we have a number of items that will be on the agenda, which will be published soon by the Planning Department, probably tomorrow. But we do have a Parking Commission that meets. There are openings on the commission if you were interested in serving and talking about parking. No time like the present. I hear a volunteer right now, actually. Please contact the council office or the mayor's office. I believe most of the positions are mayoral that are open. If you are a city resident, we've now made it a little bit easier for you to apply. So Parking Commission, every fourth Thursday of the month here in the Hooker Room in City Hall. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Councilmember Ruff, do you have a comment? Councilmember Chopra, do you have a comment?
And I rarely get called on towards the end, which is kind of fun because I can just make my comments on other people's comments. I would just want to point out one thing in response to Councilmember Sturbaum's criticism of the proposed UDO and the zoning changes in single-family neighborhoods. He kept talking about homeowners. This is bad for homeowners. The homeowners are have-nots. We're talking about the people who can afford to have a home. I don't know the statistics. I wish I could have asked Ms. Sims, who's here. She could probably tell me what percentage of Bloomingtonians actually even own a home. But should we be more concerned about the homeowners, or should we be concerned also with those people who work at low-paying jobs inside our city, very near the downtown, and serve us every day at the library or at restaurants, who can't even afford to live or even find a home within their range close to their home, where they're forced to live further and further out, and then have problems with transportation and so on. So when you hear this debate about the UDO, words matter, and I think the key word in that argument is homeowners. This is bad for homeowners, bad for the haves, but not for the have-nots. That's why we need to change the the densities in those neighborhoods. And then my second comment was as to the meeting on Monday night that was called on Friday at 4-something p.m. I did not go to that meeting on Monday, so by all, Councilmembers Vole and Shirley could not have met me as well. I didn't go. I didn't appreciate last-minute calling of a meeting. I also didn't appreciate the idea of reconsidering a vote that the council made. There are a couple problems I had with that. Number one is that we need to have confidence in what our council does, and that when we make a vote and we make a decision, it's what we mean, and it means what we want. When you go and do these reconsideration motions on Monday evenings at the convention center, number one, that's not good for the public at all. It's late notice, and you're very likely to have public show up to a meeting like that when they are noticed on a Friday evening. And number two, I think it gives the public a perception, rightfully so, that the council is willing to make a decision and then get talked out of it right away. And I think that it's important to know that your council members, when they vote, really think long and hard about their vote, and then that should be the final say. So I didn't go on Monday night for that reason, and also because I had to take my kids to soccer, but I didn't feel like it was a priority for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Piedmont Smith, do you have a comment?
Yes, I have a report from the Climate Leadership Summit, the Indiana Climate Leadership Summit that I attended last Thursday with others from Bloomington, both city and county government, who are concerned about climate change. And the keynote speaker was David Orr, retired professor from Oberlin College, which is my alma mater. And I just wanted to relay a few things that he said because I thought they were very insightful. Climate change has kind of three aspects. There's the technical aspect where, we hope we can engineer our way out of some of these negative impacts. There's the economic aspect, of course. If we were to tax carbon, that would go a long way. And then there's the political. And that aspect is what he spent the rest of his talk discussing. And he said something very interesting that some may label as un-American or unpatriotic, because we have this perception of our country as being the richest country in the world. But in fact, we're only the richest country in the world because we didn't pay the costs that went along with our rapid development. We didn't pay the cost of what our rapid depletion of natural resources actually had on the environment. And even in the past 100 years, not talking about future, in the past 100 years, Indiana has had 5.5 inches more rainfall and has gotten 1.2 degrees warmer. And the worst is yet to come. So sure, if you don't pay for the costs of your development, you're the richest country in the world. And then he really got to the crux of the matter is how are we going to really make the changes we need to have a habitable climate in 30 or 40 years. And it really comes down to how much power people have in this country. Is this really still a democracy? The Economist magazine did a study in 2018 on different governments throughout the world and labeled the United States as a flawed democracy. There's such a vast, unequal distribution of wealth. And when you have such vast divergences of the top 1% having, thousands of times more wealth than most everybody else, it really means democracy doesn't work, because their vote counts more because they can donate. And we all know candidates need a lot of money to win. This idea that started with Ronald Reagan in the 80s, that government is the problem, led to defunding government, led to government being less effective, which made it look like more of a problem. So it was kind of a vicious cycle. The other aspect that led Professor Orr to question how democratic we really still are as a country is the misrepresentation in the Senate, where Montana, which has, 5 million people total, not 3 million, I think, has the same representation in the Senate as California, which has, I don't know, many, many more millions of people. And actually, the prediction is that 30% of the U.S. population will elect 70% of U.S. senators by 2040. That doesn't sound democratic to me. Then there's a problem of gerrymandering. Of course, partisan legislatures on the state level make the districts that decide who gets to send people to Congress. The power of corporations, I already mentioned. With Citizens United, they can give as much as they want to political action committees and support candidates. And Russian interference. He put up a graphic about all of the elections. It's not just in the United States, all around the world, that Russian hackers and Russian bots have infiltrated to influence the outcome of their elections. So it was pretty gloomy, this talk, but it just served to remind us that we need to redouble our efforts to elect people who really understand and recognize and acknowledge the facts, the science that says climate change is happening and the effects will be severe. If you want your children and grandchildren to have a long, healthy life, you got to care about climate change. He also said, if you are apolitical, you are a logical fallacy. Meaning, by being apolitical, you're just accepting the status quo. So I don't think anybody can afford to be apolitical when the future of the human race is at stake. And that's why I am very appreciative of the people here locally and across the world who are organizing the Global Climate Strike this Friday. There will be a rally starting in Dunn Meadow on the IU campus at 12:30 and then making their way to City Hall. So I urge you all to reflect upon what you can do in your own life or through political action to make sure that we leave a planet to our children and grandchildren that is going to be habitable for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Councilmember Granger.
Thank you. I wanted to send my thanks to the county commissioners for calling a work session on Monday for the both counties, city council, county council, the mayor, the commissioners, to try to make some headway on the plan for the convention center. I think we got some questions answered. We had more questions, but it felt good for people to come together and talk. And I am looking forward to our next meeting, which will be between the county councilors and the city councilors. It is yet to be determined, though. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just like to note that regarding the meeting, city council meeting special session on Monday, where we heard the single petition, the plan unit development that came back at the request of several council members, that although I didn't support it, I very much appreciate all of the work that went in terms of negotiation with the petitioner, because it turned out to be a much better project in the process. Okay, let's move now to reports from mayor and city offices. Are there any? Seeing none, are there any reports from council committees? Seeing none, we will go now to the public. If you'd like to make,
Show of hands, who want to speak?
good idea.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we'll limit comments to 4 minutes per person. Just as a preview, this is what the tone I'll use sounds like. There's a small beep that starts your period. When it's time to start winding up, you'll hear this gong. When your time is over, you'll hear the beeping 3 times, like so. So just in case anybody's wondering, that's what the sound effects are for. Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name.
Good evening. Good evening, council members. Paul Post, President of the Fraternal Order of Police, Lodge 88. Since the last time we spoke, several things have happened. We have had the opportunity to speak with several of you about the issues we're facing and answer your questions. I have shared your positive words with the membership. Thank you for those and your attention in this matter. Please let us know if we can continue to answer questions. We all want a signed contract, just like you, and hopefully just like Mayor Hamilton. Having one provides the necessary framework to successfully provide law enforcement services to the community in an organized manner. Going without one will bring chaos and uncertainty, not only to our members and their families, but to the city as well. Going into 2020 without a signed contract, as threatened by the city attorney, will result in more officers leaving this department. They have put up with a lot over the past 2 years of this contract negotiation, and to reach that point will drive them away. This will only serve to further the recruiting and retention problem we have now and continue to drive up the overtime costs we spoke about last. Last week, BPD hired and swore in 4 new officers. This brings BPD up to 99 officers, or only 4 short of the budgeted staffing of 103 officers. We hope that this group will all pass the rigorous training of the next several months and then will choose to stay with the department for a long career. Unfortunately, in this same time period, another senior officer announced his leaving the department next month. He is yet another example of an experienced officer who is choosing to leave Bloomington for an agency with higher pay and better benefits. The cycle will continue. We're up 4, now down 1. Still below fully staffed and still well below the national average of officers per population level. We've also seen an outpouring of positive comments toward our plight, that the public understands and supports what we've tried to accomplish in this contract negotiation. Fixing a major recruiting and retention problem requires financial commitment and an acceptance of the reality of the current police hiring market. Thank you to the public who spoke out in support of your officers. It is greatly appreciated. Tonight, my colleagues will present further examples to you and speak about the lack of sustainability in operating a police department in this fashion. We will address some of the falsehoods put forth by the city team lately about our benefits. Make no mistake, this negotiation is centered on the fact that BPD is no longer market competitive. We are asking to make this 4-year contract a stepping stone toward correcting that downward slide, with the knowledge that it will take the same effort in 2022. We cannot fix the recruiting and retention problem at this agency without that commitment. We hope that you will continue to look closely at these issues as we enter the 2020 budget hearings and encourage the mayor and the city team to continue to work with us on achieving a fair and competitive contract. Your officers and their families deserve nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Again, the gong means you have a minute or 30 seconds to wrap up, so it's not the end of your time. Thank you.
Good evening, council members. My name is Drew Bazan. I am the Bloomington Police Department Second Shift Representative. In addition to the salary issue with this contract negotiation, we are also facing the threat of losing a time-honored employee benefit. Across most shift-type work, regardless of profession, seniority is used to determine shift placement. At BPD, that has been the practice for 20-plus years and has worked well. Everyone knows that in shift work, when you are young and starting out in the profession, you have to work the non-preferred shifts until you gain some seniority in that organization. That's not a new phenomenon. Unfortunately, the city team has made it clear that they are determined to remove this employee benefit so that the administration can place officers where they want, not where the officers want. This lack of control will prove devastating to personal life planning and will further drive officers away from this agency. We will continue to reject proposals that attack this benefit. The argument being put forth is that second shift is unsafe, too young and inexperienced. We don't deny the average age of the department is quite young now, but I'd like to point out that this was caused by the ongoing retention issue. Experienced officers continue to leave the agency when they feel underappreciated and underpaid. As a current member of second shift, I'm in a position to provide accurate insight to the state of that shift. I'd like to begin with some numbers. Current staffing for active field training officers, these are the officers that train the new recruits. For each shift, first shift has 4, third shift has 8, while seconds is in the middle with 5. The number of patrol rifles fielded on third shift is 9, on seconds it is 7. Less lethal launchers. These are 12-gauge shotguns that have been converted to shoot beanbag projectile. Third shift has 5, while seconds has almost double at 9. CERT officers, these are officers that are part of our CERT team. Without including supervisors, per shift, first shift has 1, third shift has 3, and seconds has 2. If we include the supervisors into that count, first shift has 3, third shift has 4, as well as second shift has 4. The patrol division operates with 4 supervisors, 1 lieutenant, and 3 sergeants assigned to each shift. Afternoon shift was assigned only 3 supervisors at the beginning of 2019 and had only 2 supervisors from mid-March to mid-May until another supervisor was added. Second shift was not fully staffed with supervisors until the beginning of June. If there truly was a safety issue with afternoon shift, their officers, would it not be reasonable to staff the shift with 4 supervisors and the most experienced supervisors? In 2019, several officers have furthered their careers by becoming instructors, hostage negotiators, detectives, or promoted to patrol sergeant. In 2018, a second shift officer was named Officer of the Year, and many officers received recognition for their efforts throughout the 2018 fiscal year. December of 2018, an incident occurred involving an afternoon shift officer taking gunfire from a mentally unhealthy suspect. That officer was able to radio out critical information to other responding officers, and second shift was able to take the suspect into custody with no officer injury. The professionalism and teamwork of those officers was crucial in the successful outcome of that high-risk incident. The handling of that incident was commended by administrators throughout BPD for its exemplary execution. I can confidently say that second shift is a safe shift. I invite anybody to come on a ride along with any second shift officer so that they may witness their professionalism and training hard at work in the field. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. My name is Jeff Rogers. I'm a member of the Bloomington Police Department. Tonight, I would like to provide additional information to support our position on recruitment and retention. The last time I spoke to you, I gave you the overtime expenditures year to date. I'd like to tell you those numbers were incomplete. Whenever an officer works overtime, they have 2 options. They can either take the overtime, meaning be paid for it, or they can take comp time or paid time off. Because it's paid time off, it still has a cash value. 2018, the overtime was $695,000 plus $202,000 in comp time for a total of $897,000. 2019, year to date, $571,000 plus another $141,000 in comp time, over $712,000 year to date. Right now, it's projected over $991,000 for this year. Last time we spoke to you, the deputy mayor made some comments the next day on a radio program. I would like to address some of those comments. He indicated that the unlimited sick time for officers was a benefit to us. Police officers are on the city's sick policy. We're required to provide documentation after 3 occurrences of being sick in a calendar year, just like the rest of city employees. In 2018, Police officers used a total of 446 days off for the entire year. Now, over 235 days were used for just 5 officers that had a severe injury or illness. The average was 4.7 days per officer. That's how many sick days were used per officer. This year, we've used 156 days. Right now, it's an average of 1.6 days, and we're projected to use 234, which would be an average of 2.5 days per year. Now, if we were on the city's sick time policy, meaning we obtain paid time off at the period of 13 days per year. So last year, the city would have owed the police officers an additional 789 days off. This year, it's projected that they would owe us an additional 1,001 days off. So this is not a benefit to the police officers. This is a benefit to the city for us being on unlimited sick. There was a direct comparison made to Lafayette Police Department. We didn't make that comparison. The third-party company that was hired by the city to do a salary study stated that Lafayette PD is the closest comparison to Bloomington in this state. The deputy mayor made some comments about longevity pay and how that can change what an officer is actually paid. Well, a one-year officer at Lafayette makes $11,000 more than a one-year officer at Bloomington. A 20-year officer at Lafayette makes $10,500 more than a 20-year officer at Bloomington. So your longevity is not making much of a change on that. Concerning the IU Police Department and officer ratio, IUPD, Sheriff's Department, State Police all respond to BPD in emergency situations. We do the same for those agencies. Jurisdiction determines which agency takes the call. I wish that IUPD counted for us, but they do not, and they cannot be added to our numbers because they don't handle calls that take place off of campus. Just like if a student goes to a party at an apartment in the city, gets robbed or beat up, they may live on campus, but we still investigate that crime because of where it happened. We have the facts and data to support we are underpaid and overworked compared to other agencies, both smaller and larger in size. Of course, the city is going to try to downplay those numbers, say things like everyone feels that they're underpaid because they don't want to accept the scope of the problem. The city has stated their cornerstone is to bring the city into the future and ensure that employees have market competitive salaries. We're not asking to be paid the most. In fact, the last proposal that we gave to the city, it would have taken us from being paid 66th in rank in the state to 34th in rank, even though we are the 7th largest city. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment.